in the game collecting community, it seems like everyone's most nostalgic about whatever console generation they grew up with, but it's never really been like that for me. I'm 23, so the first console generation that I really remember was Gen 7. I think, I was born pretty much at the beginning of Gen 6, but by the time my brain wasn't just like complete soup, it was Gen 7. My first console was an Xbox 360 in either 2007 or 2008. I got it for Christmas that year because my brother had asked for it. For those who aren't familiar with this way of talking about consoles, Gen 7 is the 7th generation of consoles, which was the Xbox 360, the PS3, the Wii, the DS, and of course, the PSP. Like I said, the 360 was my console. A bunch of my friends had Wiis. Sony as a whole was just kind of foreign to me. I have some vague memory of playing, I think it was just some Tony Hawk game on my friend's PS2 once. And when the guy fell down, he bled, and that was I'd never seen that in a game before, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And then also, a lot of my friends that had Wiis, or just other friends, had DSs as well, and I was always very jealous of those. The DS, I remember specifically someone showing off the DSi and all the little, trinkets it came with, and I was like, that's so sick. And I didn't know what the PSP was, obviously. What do I look like? Some kind of nerd? And although this was definitely my least favorite console generation, and we'll get into the reasons why in a second, it wasn't all bad. There are a lot of games from this era that I played then that I don't really play today, that I look back on fondly. I remember playing GTA 4 a lot with my friends. Also, I was too young for a lot of these games, but my older brother was the one who kind of took initiative in asking for games, so I ended up just playing what he wanted most of the time. So that's how I got these games. But yeah, I would play GTA 4 a lot with my friends on Xbox Live. Modern Warfare 2 was a big one, and I remember bringing that game to college with me, and it was a pretty big hit with me and my roommates, because yeah, that is just a classic split screen multiplayer game to play. I played Assassin's Creed 2 a lot. I really don't care about the Assassin's Creed series at all anymore, but back then I remember really liking this game, and I think generally it's the one that people like the most. It has some pretty cool movement mechanics, and I remember the stealth blades that I think literally Leonardo actual da Vinci gives you, and I remember that was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen at the time. And also, you have a cousin named Mario, and he says, "It's a me, Mario." I remember that. Saints Row 3, which is just the cartoon version of GTA, pretty much. I think I've recently got to, and I want to play it, because I remember everyone always saying that Saints Row 2 was better than Saints Row 3. Saints Row 4 is just eh. It was a whole different game. They made it superheroes and stuff. But Saints Row 3 was really fun. It was a very cartoony, not literally cartoony, but just a slapstick world, and you just pretty much did what you did in GTA. Crackdown, which is also kind of a GTA-ish game, but you're an enforcer or a cop of some sort, and it's the same thing, but you do that. And also, it's superhero stuff, you can throw buses. That's pretty much what I like to do in that game. I would grind up my strength stat until you could pick up buses, and then you just throw them around, and that's cool. Holy Castle Miner Z. Does anyone remember that game? Please comment it down below. It was this Minecraft ripoff. Or not ripoff, it was honestly a pretty good game in its own right, but it was a Minecraft type game on the Xbox Live Arcade, which we'll get into that a bit in a sec. But it had guns, and you played as your Xbox avatar, so you were just a weird me looking thing in a Minecraft type world, and there was guns, and then they also added aliens. Also, for some reason, the title music from this game really sticks in my head. And I played this game so much with my friends, especially before I got actual Minecraft. I would just play this game all the time. I remember I met a bunch of people on this game that just became my Xbox Live friends for a while. That was a sick little thing they used to do back in the day. But then also there are some games from this era that I liked and I still like or love. Obviously Skyrim, like I've said in many a video, is my favorite game of all time, pretty much. There's some other ones up there. It's awesome. I love Skyrim so much. I still play it all the time, even to this day. Need for Speed Carbon specifically is one of my favorite games ever, but I really like this era of Need for Speed. Most Wanted, Underground, all those. Just a very good run of Need for Speed games. Similarly, Forza, both Motorsport and Horizon. I'm probably more into Horizon, and that started towards the end of this generation. Those games are awesome. Burnout's also super fun. The Lego games were always a hit. I still play them from time to time, especially Lego Star Wars, the complete saga. The new Lego Star Wars just doesn't do it for me. It's a completely different genre of game almost from what the actual Lego Star Wars is. Star Wars The Force Unleashed also, which is my favorite Star Wars game of all time. I haven't played it a ton recently, so I can't guarantee that it still holds up, but I'm pretty sure people like it. It's just a cool I don't know, I just remember really liking how the Force worked and you could throw around little robots and stuff. This was my introduction to Soul Calibur with Soul Calibur 4, which I think might be a lot of people's least favorite. I haven't played all the Soul Caliburs. I played 2 and 6 mostly, I'd say. currently. But 4 is where it began, and I remember Yoda was funny in the game because he was just way shorter than everyone else. And then I also, of course, love Castle Crashers and Super Meat Boy, which were 2 indie games around this time that I think really were kind of at the genesis of this era of indie games that we're in now, where they're like fully an alternative to AAA games. That was really starting now, especially on like the Xbox Live Arcade. As I've talked about before, Super Meat Boy is a brutal but super fun platformer where the whole gimmick is that you go through short stages one at a time, and then when you die, you get a replay of all your attempts at the same time. I love the art style in this game, and it's some of my favorite music of any game ever. I make video game music, and the video game music in Super Meat Boy really inspires what I do. And then I realized I haven't really talked about Castle Crashers before on this channel, which is shocking because it's like all I ever talk about. But it's a 2D beat 'em up that really, in a lot of ways, breathed life into indie games as like kind of a conglomerate, and also beat 'em ups as like a genre, because obviously they were a lot bigger and like the 8 and 16-bit generation kind of died out for a while. Castle Crashers was one of the first big successful attempts at a return to beat 'em ups, and I just love, again, its cartoony art style, its music, its upgrade system. It had like RPG elements, and then there are like tons of characters in this game, and every time you beat a run through of it, you get another character, and that really motivated me to beat this game a ton of times with a ton of different groups of friends. It's a super awesome beat 'em up that really still holds up today. And yeah, those are the games that I played at the time. A lot of them were just what my brother got. A few of them were stuff I downloaded myself on Xbox Live Arcade. And then there were a few series that my brother was into that just really never hooked me, like Madden and Far Cry, I think are the main ones. We had a couple of those games each, and I was just like, I don't care about these at all. To set the stage for this generation, I feel like there was a lot of experimenting in Gen 6 with kind of like higher budget, bigger title type of games. And in Gen 7, there was even more of that, but there was less of the experimentation because they'd kind of already figured out like the genres that worked or were the most effective, and even the series that worked and were the most effective. I feel like a lot of the juggernauts of gaming were established at this time, just like the series we always get, like Modern Warfare, like Assassin's Creed, like all of the sports series in their current forms. You know, this is when Madden, it was pretty much only Madden, NBA 2K, all that stuff. I mean, I might be wrong about 2K, but you get my point. It really did kind of set the stage for what AAA has become today. And because of all this consolidation, it just feels like everything was very samey. Obviously, Nintendo's always an outlier, but the Wii was kind of doing its own whole thing with the motion control. There are tons of Wii games I love, and motion controls can be fun, but the Wii also had like, you know, just so much like shovelware and nothing games that were just built around making people shake the Wiimote, and the games probably cost like $10 to produce. The Wii's always felt like a handful of good games kind of floating on top of a pile of shovelware to me. The DS and the PSP had some cool stuff going on, but they were not in the spotlight, and also I didn't have them, so it doesn't matter. I think also Gen 7 just feels like the first generation that didn't have a major jump in technology. Now, there was an upgrade between like the PS2 and PS3. It wasn't like world changing. The last couple of generations, from 8-bit to 16-bit to early 3D to the 6th generation's 3D, those were all medium changing developments. Whereas Gen 7 really was just like, oh, it's what we had in Gen 6. It's just, you know, a little smoother and the textures look nicer. From there, it's like, I genuinely couldn't tell you the difference between a Gen 8 and a Gen 9 game. So it really kind of feels like that final step generation where, you know, even if we're not quite ready to admit it yet, we really did kind of max out with what pursuing better graphics can do. I feel like the realism also evolved out of like the edginess of the 6th generation when Mario was frowning and Kirby was frowning and stuff. But then in the 7th generation, they kind of took all the fun out of that edginess and just left us with like the gritty reality of it all. And so everything was getting more realistic. Everything was gray and brown and this really ugly yellow color that was always on all the daytime segments in any of these games. Generally, for Need for Speed Most Wanted is people's favorite. I choose Carbon over it, pretty much only because it's all at night, and you don't have to see that gross Gen 7 yellow daytime thing that they did, because it looks so bad. There's also a big emphasis on making games cinematic, whether that be games like Assassin's Creed or COD, or really the main culprit of this, and I use the word culprit because I don't like this trend, Sony, with series like The Last of Us and Uncharted getting started at this time, which anyone who knows me knows I love those games so much. They're so great. No, they're not my thing at all. At least Sony gave us Little Big Planet during this generation though, so it wasn't all a flop. Online play became more common, and you know, it's kind of led us into the hellscape of like live service competitive shooters that we have now. I hate that stuff. It's just so not what I like about gaming at all. So I was really checked out to that, and it's why I started getting into retro gaming. If you want me to make a video more about that, let me know down in the comments. This video actually spawned out of me making a script for that video. This was also the beginning of like the pack type DLC, speaking of that, which I mean like just small little things, a new costume for a character or something, but luckily that never became a trend of like people paying real money for cosmetics in games. I'm glad that that never really took off. And then also JRPGs just went away. Like they were gone. There weren't any this generation. There were, obviously, and especially on like the DS, but even on like the main consoles there were like a lot of Tales games came out. Eternal Sonata comes to mind, Blue Dragon. Like there were JRPGs happening, but they kind of, I don't know, we weren't doing them for a while. Final Fantasy 13, everyone's favorite Final Fantasy. And yeah, I feel like just looking back at the 7th generation feels a little drab because it feels like we haven't changed much. Like I said, especially in the AAA scene, it's just kind of become more of the same, and they're just dumping more money into doing the same stuff over and over again. The indie scene's obviously taken off, and I think that is where all of the life in modern gaming is. That's where all the interesting ideas are happening. That's where all the actual fun games are being made. Let me know what you guys think. Looking back on the 7th generation, does it stand out to you as particularly awesome or particularly boring and lackluster like it does to me? Make sure to like and subscribe. Join our Patreon. Andy and I put reviews on there, and we do extra content when we record together. If you like what we do in this channel, it's definitely worth taking a look at that. And thank you.